Welcome to Royalwood Church, and thank you for joining us online. If this ministry has impacted your life in any way, please share your testimony by sending us an email at media@royalwood.cc. We would love to hear about your experience. Or if you would like to give to the church financially, you can do so online at royalwood.cc by simply clicking on the Giving tab. Also, if you would like to be notified when we upload new sermons, subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast. Once again, thank you for joining us online. Please open up your heart to receive a word from God today.
Here we go. Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter, verse number 24. And of Asher, he said, let Asher be blessed with children. Let him be acceptable to his brethren, and let him dip his foot in oil. Thy shoes shall be iron and brass, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. And I'm just going to preach a little bit, and it's just going to be about shoes. Everybody say shoes. You may be seated. This may interest the ladies right off. Shoes. How many of you ladies love shoes? How many of you just like them? How many of you just love them? How many of you lying? Well, I don't care one way or the other, you know, and I could just wear anything. Guys never get together and go look for shoes. When I go shopping, now, Sister Macy, no matter where we go, if we're just looking around at a mall or something, she's going to always end up in the shoe department. She didn't need it. It's just in case they're giving them away. She's going to be there for those shoes. And she doesn't mind just looking around and not purchasing, but just looking at the stuff that they have. With me, that's never been a thing with me. With me, when I go to the mall, it's like a scavenger hunt. I need brown socks. Where can I get brown socks? Where can I get the jeans or the shirt or whatever? I just got my list and I just go look for that. And I'm not going to pass anything up and look at it. I'm going for the brown socks, and I'm going straight to the brown socks. I'm going to get those brown socks, and we're going to get in the car and go home. Well, I mean, that's the way I envision it. But we're going to have that, and we're going to do those things. But when you hear the story about how shoes play a role in the Old Testament, I hope it'll bless you a little bit today by some of the things that's happening in the world today. You know, the Israelites got shoes that never wore out. The Bible tells us that God provided them the shoes that while they were on their wilderness journey, those shoes never wore out. Now, that wouldn't be good in our day and time, because if you had shoes that never wore out, and 20 years ago you bought a pair of shoes and you still had them today, you probably wouldn't wear them. You know, it wouldn't be that much of a benefit to us in our day and time, because after a while it'd be like you pull some shoes out of the back of the closet that you're keeping. Every now and then I don't have this problem now after 5 foot of water in our house, but I used to keep, I'd get shoes, got holes in them and everything, but I would think, if I'm going to get outside and do some painting, I'll just wear these shoes. Well, I had about 6 or 8 pair of those shoes in case I ever decided that I was going to be a painter. I would have those shoes. Well, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have those shoes. Ladies of our church came into my closet and they threw stuff away. And I feel like there was a couple of our ladies there. I feel like that there was just something they had in their heart. Maybe it was with a husband, maybe it was with a friend, I don't know. But once they got in that closet, he don't need that. Throw those away. He's not going to paint. Throw those shoes away. Actually, they were very kind. There were things I was going to throw away, and they decided not to throw them away. So thank you for that, ladies. I hope down the line somewhere. But there's something about this thing with shoes. Because, when we talk about this pilgrim journey, sometimes we talk about the path, but we don't talk about what we're going to wear on the path, because that's vitally important when you live for the Lord. what the shoes are going to be like. When we all get to heaven, are we going to have shoes on? I don't know that at all, but I will tell you that in this prophecy in Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter, and this was the patriarch giving all the instruction and prophetically what was going to happen with all of the sons. He comes to Asher and he says he's going to be blessed with children. He's going to have his foot dipped in oil, which meant that he was going to have some prosperity. That was a meaning for prosperity. But he's going to have shoes of iron and brass, and as the days are, so shall his strength going to be. Sometimes, and I'm going to go back to the tragedy of just a few days ago, sometimes you don't know how you would endure something severe in your life. Now, it could be a loss of a loved one. It could be being laid off of your job. It could be some kind of health crisis or something that you go through, and then you just wonder how you're going to endure it. But when you're on the bright side of a trial, you're wearing the shoes of everyday life and the shoes of joy and peace and prosperity, and you don't have the kind of shoes to walk a journey of a rough road. But the Bible said at that moment Asher was going to be given shoes of iron and brass. And I'm going to tell you, you may not know how you're going to walk some way, but God is going to give you the shoes to put on in your life where you will be able to endure what you're going through and be able to face the test of what you're facing. Sometimes I have people tell me this all the time, said, I don't know how. Several businessmen that contacted me, they said, man, I just can't even imagine what it'd be like to lose your house. And let me just be personal with you and just tell you just a couple of things. And a lot of times when you tell people, you say, well, I had insurance, they just feel like, then you didn't have anything. All of you that have insurance, flood insurance, and your house got flooded, you know right away that just because you have insurance, it may mean that ultimately you can replace a lot of things, but that doesn't mean it's just, I went and checked in a big hotel and the insurance is taking care of all of it for me. You still realize you got to throw your stuff away. You still realize that you got to meet with an adjuster. You still have to apply. You still have to be out of things. You still go through your things and realize, I didn't realize that this was in this drawer and now that's gone. You don't really have it made because you got insurance. You've got those things that you've got to face. There's things that you got to go through. But sometimes when people say, I don't even know what that would be, that's exactly right. I don't even know how I could endure something like that. I've never done that. That must be a terrible thing. Well, the reason why is because when you're on the good side of life, you don't have the kind of shoes you're going to need to walk through that journey. That valley is going to require different kinds of shoes. It may require the toughest shoes of iron and brass, but when you get there, God's going to have them for you. He's going to put those on you and you're going to be able to walk. How does that person endure? Listen, when you talk to people and say, well, they're just really strong, I want to tell you, I admire them. They're really strong. They're going to look at you and say, I'm not strong. I don't feel of myself as being strong. I don't feel like I'm a strong individual. But what they realize is when they get there, a peace comes over them. A joy comes over them. A strength will come over them because those shoes in the sunlight won't sustain you through the darkness. You got to have other shoes. Sometimes life can yank the rug out from underneath you. See, there are people that think that they can handle just about anything. They can outsmart circumstances and they can outsmart the things of life, and that it's not going to happen. You're just going to be walking along one of these days, and this can happen to anybody. You're going to be walking along one of these days and you feel like everything's just great in your life, and all of a sudden you get a little something on your shoulder and you just feel like, man, that thing's been itching me. I need to go get it checked out. And you go in and get checked out, and then you hear the word cancer. And all of a sudden your life is starting to come apart. And you just wonder how in the world you're going to endure it. And you get to, one of the first things that happens to you is you get to thinking about all the people you had no compassion over. All the people you thought were all sissies, because whenever they had a bad diagnosis, that they asked everybody to pray and they cried, and you said, if anything ever happened to me, I'm not going up there and cry. But let me just tell you now, when you have something happen to you, when something goes on in your life, you forget what you said in your past. Those words, you'll eat them no matter how they taste, because you realize, I need God now. I've got the bad diagnosis. I need somebody to help me. I don't have a future. I've got to have God in my life. Let me tell you now, that's not a crutch that you have. Having God is not something you just lean on because you're a weakling. When you say, I've got God in my life, that is your life that will sustain you through the ups and the downs of life, through the darkness of life, through the changes of life. I have guys tell me this all the time. Let me just tell you something. I've talked to people in my time that when people need help, they're one of these kind of people, now listen to this, that feel like, well, everybody ought to just help themselves. Anybody ever heard anybody like that? I just want to see if there's anybody besides me. You ever been around anybody or talked to anybody that feel like that people should not get help, they should be helping themselves? You ever run into anybody like that? Yeah, a bunch of us have heard. Now, when they tell me, I just think people ought to help themselves. I mean, people, look at me. I'm a self-made man. You are not either. No such thing as a self-made man. You're a composite. You're a mosaic of everything you've come in contact with. But there are some people that never got the break like that. They never had a family they were born into that could help them pay their way through school and all that. So when somebody tells me, well, I don't believe in helping people, I believe people ought to help themselves, it's like, put your head closer right here. I'm going to tell you something right here. Put your head right here. The only way you can block that is like that. Y'all know that. That's the only way you can do it. That's the first thing I want to do is like, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I pull myself up on my own bootstraps and all of those other kind of dumb statements. Let me just tell you, there can be something happen in your bloodstream, in the marrow of your bone. There can be something that happened, in something just go and a mutation in your chromosome that can alter things in your blood, and your bloodstream can be filled with white cells, blood cells, and all of a sudden you have this dreaded disease called leukemia, and you're laying flat on your back and you can't even raise your hand to get you a glass of water. Now you're going to realize that sometimes you can't do it by yourself. You can't make it on your own sometimes. I'm not telling you I'm wishing it on you. And what I'm trying to preach to you is this message of hope. If you ever get there, He'll have shoes for you. If you'll lean on Him, He'll have something you can put your feet in so you can walk on. Those shoes were for traveling. The pilgrims and strangers that are in this life, and you read about in Scripture and you see in the Old Testament, New Testament, those people had a rough road to walk, and because of that they needed good shoes. They needed shoes of iron and brass because they needed to travel. Some of those shoes are designed for fighting. Some of the old armament that I've seen before in Paris, France, and in London, where some of the going back to the earlier days of the Crusades and all of that, there was a particular boot or shoes that they would wear because those shoes were meant for fighting and they were designed for fighting. They were designed to step through fire and not be burned. That's the kind of shoes I'm talking to you about today. You may have on those little slippers today that doesn't have much of a sole on them, or maybe they don't have much guarding your feet because the way is light, the way is not hard and tough. But when the way gets tough, you're going to need something else. And when you get there, He's going to give those to you. He's going to put those shoes on you where you can look at a casket where mama or daddy or whoever it is has passed on, and you wonder how you're going to go forward in your life. And at that moment, there's going to be something on your feet called those shoes that God is going to give you because you're going to go on. You're going to be able to make it. Then you have climbing shoes, those shoes that you might need to climb. You know, what I'm wearing here today is not good for mountain climbing. These little shoes here have, I mean, they got the little thin soles on them. They're comfortable. A good friend of mine calls them pimp pumps. And I don't know why that's what he said, you wearing those little pimp pumps? And I don't know, I guess. I don't know what that, he said, those little old soft things, you can't walk far with those things. Well, I'm not planning on walking cobblestones. I mean, I'm not planning, but when we were on our European vacation in some of those streets, those cobblestone streets, I had me these good walking shoes, thick rubber soles and all of that. I mean, they were tough as could be. And one day I thought, man, these things are not as tight as they need to be. And when I got to lace them up, one whole sole had come loose. The thing had done all the good it could do, because everywhere we walked, it was an uneven pavement. Those require not these kind of shoes. My feet would hurt me so badly if I had to walk very far in these on concrete. But I was planning on being on carpet today, and so I don't have to worry about that. But in life, sometimes everything is upside down. You need something then. God doesn't abandon you because you're on the down note. God actually gives you something superior to what you have on at the time when you get to the trial. That's what I want you to get in your head today, and let it bleed down into your heart, that God's not going to abandon you at those moments. He's going to be with you. The scripture said he's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Boy, I'd like to have those kind of shoes, Pastor. Man, wouldn't that be great? I could just put those on and man, it'd be great. You'll never get those shoes until you get to that path. You don't get those kinds of shoes of iron and brass until you get to the path that requires that kind of shoe. That's how people live. That's how people make it when they go through difficulties. One of our ladies who lost her home in this church, gone through incredible things. Second time she lost her home to a flood. And let me say this, if you're watching and you live somewhere in the Alps where you don't have to worry about that, where you don't have to worry about flooding, but good luck on the avalanches. But in an area that doesn't even hardly flood. I looked behind me today. Brother Bob is sitting there, lives very close to this dear sister in our church. Both of them got their homes flooded. When your home floods like that, you go out into your garage and all your tools are ruined. All of the saws and all of the drills that you have and the equipment that you've purchased through the years. I'm talking about all of your life. These are things. This belonged to Grandpa. This was his skill saw. All of that's lost. All of that is ruined. And this dear lady in our church, faithful and godly in every way, wrote today to me and some in this church and said, I am just so weary. I don't think I can even get out of bed this morning. I want y'all to keep me in your prayers. And so we started sending encouragement. Everybody said, you're going to make it. It's going to be all right. And she was saying, my husband is not feeling well. Been trying to get him to go to the doctor, and he's not been able to go. And we were saying, but your birthday, your birthday's coming. You're going to have to get this thing going in the right direction. You're going to be 75 years old. When you're 75 years old, you don't just leapfrog over difficulties like you did when you were 30 and like you did when you were 40. Those battles are harder. But when that battle comes, God's going to give shoes to make that step where they need to go. And that's why we've got to be looking at each other and saying, you're going to make it. We got to look at each other and say, God's going to help you. We've got to look at each other and say, you won't always be right here. You're going to come out. You're going to have victory. And when you look back on it, it'll be the most blessed thing that has ever been in your life, because God will do things for you at that moment that you never thought possible. I'm just asking you sometimes, go read the story of the children of Israel when they came to the bitter waters of Marah. When they came to the bitter waters of Marah, and you know this story. If you don't know this story, let me tell you what happened. They needed water. They came to a place they thought they were going to get water, and when they got there, life's disappointments came to them, and they didn't get good water. There was bitter water. They turned to Moses, and they turned on Moses, and they said, now we're going to die out here. We're going to lose our life because we got all the way here and we thought this is where we were going to get something to drink, and instead of being able to drink it, it's poisonous, it's bitter, we can't even drink it. And when Moses cried out to the Lord showed him a tree right by that place of Meribah, right by the water's edge. And the Lord said, cut that tree down and put it into the waters. And when he put it into the waters, the bitter waters became sweet, and they were able to drink it. And then they moved on to a place called Elim, which was springs of water. It was beautiful. It was an oasis. And you would think that Elim would be the thing that would be the focal point. But there was more time dedicated in the scripture to Meribah than it was to Elim, because it was at Meribah, at the bitter waters, that it was the signal of what the cross was going to do when the tree would be cut down and put into a life that was poison. Bitter waters would become sweet. When somebody has bitter lives and their bitter sins in their life, when the cross comes into a person's life, it makes that sweet again. It's not when you get to the glorious things, it's when you get to life's bitter disappointments and God reaches down and performs a miracle for you. Oh! You're not getting this like I got this. You just are not, because you're too busy thinking of that first illustration about the shoes, wondering what kind of shoes should you wear. We were throwing away stuff in our garage, and one of the things that we lost was some shoes that Brandon had gotten. When you go deer hunting during certain times of the year, you got to take these with you because those are snake boots. Which, when I get out anywhere, I would want to have snake boots because you just never know. But that way a snake can't bite through those boots, because listen, you don't need to wear snake boots if you go into the mall. You wear snake boots where snakes might be. It's an appropriate shoe to wear. You don't have to wear steel-toed shoes to school. You don't have to wear steel-toed shoes to the office. But if you're going to go work somewhere where something heavy is likely to fall on you, those would be good shoes to have. It's the appropriate footwear. The things that I'm preaching to you today is God is going to put the appropriate shoes on your feet at the right moment. He does not just say, you've got those, just wear them. At that moment, it becomes shoes of iron and brass. If you need to crawl up something, He'll give you shoes for it. If you need to endure something, He'll put something on your feet. If you need to go through something, He'll give you something that'll carry you all the way through. Let me close with this. There's no promise of the grace to meet trials until the trial is being met. Sometimes we just want to have it. We want to have that miracle. I just wished I just never needed a miracle. Well, if you never had a problem, how would you know that Jesus could solve one? When you have a problem and you realize He comes through, brother, you are never the same. Every trial that is met, everything that comes, you look at it and say, I know somehow you're going to get me out of this. Somehow I may be in the lion's den, but somehow you're going to either get me out or shut them up, one way or the other. And that's what happened with Daniel. The hour of weakness brings a secret strength you never really knew you had. And this is what he said. Look at this 25th verse. And as thy days, so shall thy strength be. As long as you need the strength, you will have it. And whatever days you're facing, the strength will be there to match the day. And you can take that all the way to the bank. Last but not least, God bless you. Thank you for that. Last but not least, let me say this to you. 27 years ago today, we buried Sister Macy's dad, passed away, Brother Carnley. What a tragic day that was. I'll never forget that. She reminds our family, this is when we buried Dad. This is Dad's birthday and Mom's birthday and all of that. And when she wrote us, we all had little comments to make, our family, and some of you were in the church or were going to church here when Mom and Dad attended the church in the Anthem building. And it doesn't seem like it's been 27 years, since he passed away, but it has been. It was a very terrible time. Sometimes people don't know that you're having difficulties because you don't get up and talk about you're having difficulty. I just kind of feel like if God lays me on your heart and you haven't heard me say anything, then it has to be God. And that's what I want to see. I want to see God send somebody to say, I've been praying for you. Because you know that comes from the Lord. And you know God then knows where you are. Even though you believe it, it's just something about it. Being able to know that came from the Lord. You probably wouldn't know this maybe if you've only been in our church for a short period of time. But my father-in-law died of AIDS. It was a very difficult time for us as a family. He had gotten very sick. We never really knew what was happening. He kept going to the doctor and they kept doing tests. This is 27 years ago. A lot of things have changed today, but this was 27 years ago. And we would say, have you been tested for everything? And, oh, yeah, they tested me for everything. Back in those days, I was working with the guy that worked with AIDS patients, and I'd gone to seminars and all kinds of stuff because that was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. Some of you remember this time, and they were starting an AIDS hospital here in Houston. Didn't know how to handle all the different things, the opportunistic infections that went along with this, Kaposi sarcoma, and the cancers and all the different things that were involved in. But Dad had some of those symptoms: fever from an unknown origin, unexplained weight loss, just some of the classic things, debilitating chills, fever, and all of that. And so what we decided that we would do is because he said he'd been tested for everything, we just felt like we got to know it. Is Mom okay? My mother-in-law, is she going to be okay? And so we got her to come to Houston, and we set up for her to go to a clinic where she could be tested and they could get the results within the day. So that morning she went in and got her blood work done, and we took her, it was her birthday, and we took her out to dinner and had a great time together. And then we came home to our house that evening, and when we got there, the doctor had called and she called back. I'll never forget that day because she was standing at our little counter in our kitchen, and I just remember her saying, "Are you sure?" And when she said that, my wife and I both, we began to weep. We knew that this was bad. She had AIDS also, and so then we knew that Dad, this must be what the circumstances are. So in a moment's time, we were going to lose those two, not only parents, father-in-law, mother-in-law, but grandparents to our kids. They would never see a lot of things that we've seen. I can't remember exactly how all of it happened. You know, when you're in a storm, you're not keeping a diary. When you're in a storm, you're not thinking it all through. Sometimes you're just enduring the night. Weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. So when the night is here, you endure the night. You don't skip it, you don't run through it, you don't shout it away, you just endure the night. And I don't know how it all happened. They had to move into our home because he lost his job. Couldn't work. We fixed him a place and did the best that we could, and we took care of him. He passed away. I'll never forget that day. You will remember the morning he came and prayed back through to God in our church. Some of you will remember that day. We had the funeral. You all that were here were so awesome and wonderful, and it was a terrible time. Dealing with everything, all the implications, everything that was involved, it was a tragedy. And then knowing that Mom also could get sick. It was just seemingly days after he passed away that she began to show some of the symptoms and signs, and she began to get sicker and sicker, and then she got the pneumonia that accompanies HIV, and she got down, and then she passed away. I would like to tell you that everything that happened and who said what and how you did and what all people did that helped us. And I look back and just wonder how we walked on. The only way you can walk on is by God giving you the shoes to walk on in. If you don't get His help, you can't keep walking. You've got to have Him. But I'm here to tell you today, He will not leave you. He will not abandon you. He will not desert you. He will not forsake you. He is a friend that sticks closer than your brother. Would you stand with me? Every so often we'll be talking and we'll say, man, I wish Mom and Dad were here to see this. Wish they could be a part of this. I wish they could have seen you guys, all of y'all. Wish y'all could have known them. I don't understand all the things that happen in life. I can't tell you everything that, you know. I know a lot of people feel like that if you do right things, you'll have all right things in your life, but I'm sorry, that's just not true. I hate to tell you this, but just living good doesn't mean that you're guaranteed every good thing. We just found out a couple of weeks ago that it rains on the just and the unjust. That's what your Bible says. People that faithfully serve the Lord, the Maxwells, the Burnetts, Shireen, all of the family had to be rescued from their home that now they have lost, and they faithfully sing and worship and live for the Lord. Well, what's the difference in living for Him or not living for Him? Because when you get to that spot, there are people that think the bottle is the only answer or drugs is the only thing that'll help me. But when you serve the Lord, you don't even know when it happens, but somewhere something goes on your feet that causes you to walk and keep climbing higher. These shoes are made to walk higher than you're walking now. Let's go up a little higher. The church will not go down. The church will go up. The other day, I got up, got me something to drink, laid back down. Don't fault me for this. But I laid there in bed and I started thinking about all the stuff that I'd lost. I mean, the couch and all that stuff can be replaced, but I was just thinking, my goodness, my Uncle Jimmy's watch is in there. In my drawer. I can't even get in there to get it. I've got books that I collected over the years, and they're not valuable to anybody probably than to me, but that's in there. And I was just, it was just a down time, just low point. And as I laid there and I just told the Lord, you know, and God, I've served you, I live for you. I got to thinking about other people. I got to thinking about people that we were helping. That when they got out of those dump trucks, they were soaked to the skin. They had been rescued by boats, and then they drove them in big trucks and left them under the Highway 90 bridge. The rain was coming down so hard you couldn't hardly see, and they were standing there, whole families, with just a little sack, a little plastic bag with everything that life had was right there in that bag, and everything else was gone. And then I began to weep over people that never had the things to lose and never had the advantages, that never had good things. I've had those. I had them to lose. And then I got to thinking about all that we're facing in the days ahead. And it's not just us, but we want to help our people, and we want to be a blessing to our people. And we've been writing daily our friends in the Golden Triangle, and now it'll switch to Florida. We've been sending money and help to Myron and Kim in Dickinson, and just doing anything we could possibly do to help somebody. And you just wonder how you're going to do it every day. And the way you're going to do this is you're going to take a moment and look at your feet and realize God's putting you something on your feet that'll help you walk over anything. If you're facing a devil, He'll give you shoes of iron and brass that will step on anything that's got you bound. If you're going through a low point and you feel like depression has got you, He'll give you the shoes that'll cause you to climb higher until you can look down on the backs of eagles at their highest point, because He's got you in a higher spot than you've ever been in your life. I wonder today, is there anybody that would just want to join me here at the front and say, God, we're going to talk to you for a little bit. Maybe you want to go into the next steps today. You would like to join the church, or you'd like to be a part of something. But maybe you just want to come and say, God, give me those shoes. Let me have that on my feet, Lord. These special shoes. Hey, thank you for joining us this week for the services online. I hope that this service and the message truly blessed and encouraged you. Remember that all the messages are uploaded to our YouTube channel, Facebook page, and iTunes podcast. This broadcast has added spiritual value to your life. You can give toward the continuation of the videos and the broadcast by going to www.royalwood.cc and hit the Giving tab. Thank you so much for being a part of our ministry today, and we'll see you next week.